So there's no formal introduction tonight. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'll introduce myself. I'm Nathan Gold, and I thank you so much for coming to join me this evening. I want to make you a promise right now, and that is I will not waste your time. Okay, I know that's one of the most important things on everybody's mind. We'll be done by 8, so that way you can make plans. Might be a few minutes earlier than that, but we'll see how it goes, all right? I am going to give you a short presentation, and then we might have some time at the end for you to maybe try out some of the things you learned tonight, depending on you. You don't have to, but there will be opportunity for you to try some things if you want. I never like to put people under pressure if you're not paying to attend a session. So the topic of tonight is how to pitch to investors with 5 slides in under 5 minutes. The reason I'm here to talk to you about this topic is because entrepreneurs, co-founders, and founders are wasting too much time with investors. You just kill them with information. And so I'm going to help you figure out how you can walk into any investor's office or any meeting you have with an investor and say something like this. So thank you for your time here today. I know we only have about 15 minutes. Frankly, that's probably all we need. I have a 5-minute slideshow that I'd like to take you through. It'll give you everything we need to know in order to create a conversation. How does that sound? And no investor will say no. They'll say, oh, finally, a short presentation. Because most of your presentations are 10 minutes, 30 minutes, or worse, 45 minutes. And most of my comments tonight are going to be directed at your first meeting. Okay? After the first meeting, when you get rapport and you get invited to the next meeting, or you get invited, or I'm sorry, if you get referred to someone else, that's very different. But I'm really here to get you past that first meeting, because that's the toughest one, frankly. If you can get past the first meeting, then it's up to you to lose it after that. Okay? I will give you a link to this presentation at the end, so you don't have to take a lot of notes. In fact, I don't cram my slides with much, as you'll see. And if you have questions throughout, please just feel free to ask away, okay? All right. With that in mind, to begin with, I usually like to let you know that I am a huge believer in being prepared. If you're not prepared, this quote will pretty much sum up your life. And not only did I learn how to be prepared as a Boy Scout when I was growing up, but in every situation we find ourselves in, the more prepared you are, the better chances you have of succeeding in whatever it is. And tonight, all of my comments are going to be directed at how to pitch to investors. So I want to get you really prepared. And just a little bit about me. I've given over 15,000 presentations and product demos in my career. I've coached over 150,000 people like you in the last 9 years, traveling all over the world, helping you either win awards, get standing ovations, or better yet, raise money. And the 12,000 number is the number of hours of one-on-one coaching that I've given people in the last 9 years. So hopefully I have something to speak about tonight. I'm not really here to give you a formula necessarily. There's really no right or wrong way to pitch to investors, although we could spend all night on the wrong way. But I really just want to give you some new insights and new ways to think about what you're already either doing or thinking about doing when it comes to raising money or getting resources from these investors. I've been around. I work with these guys. In fact, if you ever attend one of these Million Cups by the Kauffman Foundation, in order to get on the stage to present, those 2 companies that go up on stage to present for 6 minutes have to watch some very special videos that are provided by the Kauffman Foundation. And a whole bunch of those videos are me, because the Kauffman Foundation uses me as their pitch coach. Yes, sir?
I've actually seen them because I'm going to be on the stage next
On the 7th. That's your compelling event coming up, and you've already watched those videos?
Yeah.
Did they help?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. I paid him $20 on the way in. You didn't see me slip them that, but thank you very much. So they were helpful? Sorry?
I didn't get some dog food.
Okay, thank you. And in the last couple of years, I've actually been expanding my wings a little bit and accepting consulting work from people going to the TED Talk. You can't see the TED. We're missing a little bit of red in this projector here tonight. It might be the lights, no big deal. But these are 3 people I've helped create their TED Talks and talk about being prepared. We have enough time. I need to share this story with you. This guy right here, Evan Tan, He gave a 3-minute TED Talk. Do you know TED Talks come in 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, or 18 minutes? Most of the ones you watch are 18 minutes, but he had a 3-minute, 3 minutes. And he got up in front of the audience, and right there is Bill Gates and Al Gore and a whole bunch of other billionaires. And he starts to give his 3-minute, very well rehearsed and very naturally sounding presentation, and about 20 seconds into it, the microphone lets out. And we had prepared for that. Because that happens. Sometimes tech goes wrong. What are you going to do? Look around and lose your train of thought and lose your momentum and the rapport that you've just gotten with the audience because something as little as a tech going down? No. He just said, well, I guess we'll wait for the AV people to get their act together, and I'll just keep. And he just kept going. And about another 40 seconds, the AV came back on, and he finished out beautifully. And afterwards, in the break, guess who walked up to him and handed him his card? Who were you? Bill Gates. Bill Gates came up to him, handed him his card, and said, wow, that was really great the way you pushed through that problem we had there on stage. And by the way, you have some cool technology I'd like to hear more about. So when you see things go wrong, if things look like they're failing, don't worry about it. Just deal with it. And you might get even a better result than you could have ever hoped for. But being prepared is what it's all about. Now, it's been a long day. I know that you have lots of things on your mind. And the information I want to share with you here tonight is so simple that I need to actually get the left brain and your right brain connected up really quickly. Otherwise, you're going to look for things, make this more complicated than it needs to be. So I have a little exercise that I do with all my audiences to help you get in the right frame of mind. Are you willing? It's not a jumping around. You don't have to hug each other. It's not a Tony Robbins seminar. I'm going to put up here a sentence. I just want you to read the sentence once. Don't try to figure out what it means, because it really doesn't have a meaning. If you speak another language, don't translate it into that language, because it's not going to help you. Just read it once, okay? There. And then look back over here at me when you're done reading it. Remember, we're not trying to figure out what it means. All right, I think we all have it. Now, I'm going to take it away for a second, then I'm going to put it back up. When I put that sentence back up, in complete silence, just as you are right now, I'm going to ask you to count to yourself how many F's do you see in that sentence. Okay? And the letter can appear anywhere in the sentence. Now, before I put the sentence back up, I want to let you know that adults like to make up rules. Here's one rule. Please don't make this rule up, okay? Because it'll keep it simple. Remember tonight's simple? There are no uppercase F's inside an uppercase E. Those don't count, okay? I know, people say, what about the F's inside the E? No, just F. That's why all the letters are in uppercase. And I even use Courier News, so there's no question as to which letter is which. Every letter takes up the same amount of space, okay? And there's no black text on a black background, there's no white text on a white background, so the answer's not infinite. Okay? Ready? Go. Just keep the number to yourself. And feel free to double check yourself as I wait for everyone to get their number. Anybody need more time? Okay, would all of you please stand up? Because a very interesting dynamic is going to happen right now. Now, we were all looking at the same thing, right? Now, watch what happens around the room when I ask all of those of you who saw 1, 2, or 3 F's. That's all you saw? Could you please sit down now? It's okay, don't worry. Just if you saw 3, 2, or 1, so you all saw 3, 2, or... The rest of you saw more? Well, we were all looking at the same thing, weren't we? Okay, how about 4? Could you please sit down? Couple more. 5? And all of you saw more than 5? 6? Good. So we have a little problem in the room. Did you see more than 6? 9. Yeah, just... We'll have a little conversation afterwards, okay? But let me put it back up here and see if you can find the other 3, the ones who only saw 3, 4, or 5. They're all right there, right in front of you, staring you right in the face. And let me help you out. What about that one? And what about that one? And what about that one? I know the other three are pretty obvious, but you missed those three. We'll talk later. But there are 6. And the purpose of this exercise is really just to let you know that this topic of communications and presentation skills, it's all been said before pretty much. It's all in the books. There's tons of examples of good elevator pitches and good investor pitches out there on YouTube and Vimeo for you to watch. So what are you doing here tonight? You're looking for more answers, aren't you? You're looking for easier ways to communicate the value of what you do, why you do it, why anybody should care. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here tonight. So I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to bore you with formulas and methodologies and theory. I'm really here to help you see a couple of more F's as it relates to your ability to be better at convincing people to give you more time. And eventually, the resources that you're looking for, which is money, workspace, introductions, a handshake, a hug. I don't know. What are you looking for? What kind of resources are you on? Okay? All right. It's always about the audience. So before I take you into the material, you need to ask yourself this question before I can tell you how to pitch to an investor. You need to know about them. So check out their websites, check out their LinkedIns, check out their blog posts, check out their tweets, and everything you can about them so you're a little bit smarter when you walk in the door or when you meet them at a cafe to have a conversation. Now, I'm not saying you should go deep into that so that the minute you meet somebody you can say, hey, I saw you windsurfing over the weekend. Man, that was amazing. Like, what? Are you talking to me? We're just meeting and you already know that I'm a windsurfer? So I don't use it for that reason, but knowing who your audience is will make you smarter about the information you share with them. And it'll also help you in building that commonality that you want to find between people, right? All right. I'm going to leave that up to you. You know how to find out about people. There's too many ways to do that today. But I want to redefine the word investor for you because in my travels, I find that investor in most of your minds come with dollar signs or euros or francs or whatever. Oh, we don't use francs anymore. Oh, they might again. Anyway, just kidding. So the point here is that an investor is not just someone that's full of money. Yes, investors have money if the fund is funded and they can start allocating those funds. But investors are also full of a 4-letter word. Help. And help comes in many forms. Money is one of them, obviously, resources, and all sorts of things that they can do for you if they like you and if they want to work with you. Even if they don't invest in you, they might invest some time in you rather than money. The second kind of an investor that you're going to run into are your customers, your partners, your strategic relationships, the people that invest time and or money with you. They're investing in you, so they're investors. You just speak to them a bit differently. And then the rest of the world are actually investors in you too if they spend any time on your website, if they talk to you in the Uber car about what you're doing, or anybody that you see, that you meet, that talks to you about what you're doing in your business, they're investing in you too. It's just what degree of investment are they making? So I just wanted to get you to think that every single person you meet is an investor. How can they help you? I don't know. But how can you help them? I don't know that either. But the more relationships you build with people, the better chances you'll have of ending up with the right circle of people to help you achieve the goals and successes that you want in life. Okay, so literally everyone. Don't just go to a networking event looking for the red stickers. All right, the red stickers are the angel investors, the blue stickers are the mentors, and the white ones are everybody else. Don't spend time with just the white people. Go over to the reds and mix it up a little bit. Not with just the red people. The white labels could be better. Who knows? Okay. One of the most important things that you need to get through your heads is that this world of entrepreneurship is really getting crowded. I mean, 9 years ago when I started this, there weren't even places like this in San Francisco. Now they're on every block, just about, which is a good thing, because now you have really inexpensive places to go to work rub shoulders with people like you, go to events like this without having to pay to a lease and do all the other kinds of things that it used to take to start a business. So I'm very thrilled about that. But at the same time, you got to know that if you don't do things and say things that help you stand out, then you're just going to get lost in the noise out there. And I don't want any of you to get lost in the noise. So tonight, I'm going to share with you a whole bunch of tools, literally tools that you can use right away to help you figure out ways to stand out in the mind of your investors. And now you have a new definition of who those people are, right? All right. Let's start with the compelling opening, because I find that the weakest part of most people's pitch is the opening. And so if you have a weak opening or not a strong opening, then that makes it even more difficult for you to have a really great presentation. It takes a lot more effort. You have to work a whole lot harder at getting rapport with your audience if you don't start out with a real compelling opening. So let me give you 10 ways you can try to open a pitch. And then after these 10, you'll probably think of 10 more. But what most people do with an audience is this. They ask them questions. Now, this can work, but please ask good questions. Don't say, so how many people here in this room have a smartphone? Look, you don't even want to raise your hands because it's a dumb question. You're going to ask a question like that in a room like this, in a place like this? That's ridiculous. So don't just ask us questions to raise our hands to get an engagement with your audience, because it's really not engaging. It's actually having the opposite effect. Ask us a question that it causes us to go, wow, I never thought of that before. I wonder what I would do in a situation like that. Or, gee, I don't know. What would I do? So get us to think and give us that pause so we can think. Don't just ask the question and run into the pitch. Give us a second. Build the drama. Okay? The second way that I see people try to engage an audience is, I want you to imagine for a moment that you're on a plane to Hawaii. And then I want you to imagine that all of a sudden the light, and imagine this and imagine that, and it's like, come on. If you have to use the word imagine more than once or twice in a sentence, in the first few sentences, there are better ways to engage an audience. So be careful of how you use the word imagine. Third, a good statistic, a good number, but not a number that we've all heard. So how many of you are in IoT right now? Anybody here in the Internet of Things? Anybody? Well, it doesn't matter. Let's say you're in IoT. And everybody in IoT that week is quoting the 97% number that Gartner just released. And everybody's quoting 97%, 97%. And now you're the 8th person to go into this investor's office this week and say, so I don't know if you know this, but 97%, and it's like, really? Come on, these people are smarter than that. They've seen the same research. So why not take that number and extrapolate something out of it to make it more interesting? Make it live in a way that they'll remember you for saying, wow, I never really looked at it like that. Everybody gets us to focus on the 97. You had me looking at the 3%. Very cool. And whatever that means, it meant. But you need to do things to stand out. Not one thing, like walk in with a red nose on, but you need to do a whole bunch of things to stand out. And this is one of them. A few weeks ago, I heard a couple of medical doctors stand up to do a pitch, and this is how they started. So, ladies and gentlemen, my co-founder and I, as we were graduating medical school, we knew that there was a problem with type 2 diabetes. And so over our 16-year career, we know for a fact that 1 out of 3 of you are at risk for developing type 2 diabetes, and you don't even know it. And that's a true stat. Literally 1 out of 3 people in corporate America will develop some form of type 2 diabetes or at risk of developing it, and they don't even know. That's enough to scare the pants off of me and say, okay, keep talking. Not only did they get my attention because of the stat, but they also built the credibility behind that stat, right? Because any of us could stand up here and say that, but they had the medical background to make that claim. Number 4 is a good quote. Sometimes a good quote by someone famous, or maybe someone not so famous, could be a great way to start out a presentation. Didn't I use that on you tonight? I used the Benjamin Franklin quote. By failing to prepare, you are preparing for failure. That's the whole theme. I don't want you to fail. I want you to be prepared. Number 5 is jokes or humor. Be very careful of this. If you're not a good jokester and you can't recover from a joke that doesn't work, stay away from this. Don't try to tell a joke just to get people to laugh. Make it relevant. Okay, and if you're not a good stand-up comic, if I can't give you the microphone right now and make us smile and laugh, I'd probably stay way far away from one of these things. Okay? But sometimes someone else's joke could work, especially if you test it and test it and test it, and it works over and over and over again. You just have to be prepared for it not working one day and have to recover from it, that's all. Number 6, a demo. When my clients come back from these meetings, they say, you know, once they saw my product, they got it. I say, then start with the product. You know, most of you want to give a PowerPoint or a keynote presentation to an investor before you show them the goods, whether it's software, hardware, or even a service. Well, I got news for you folks. When you go into an office of an investor and you say something like this to start. So thank you very much for your time today. I want to maximize our time, so I have 3 things we can do, unless you can think of a 4th. 1, I have a 5-minute pitch and 5 slides. It'll give an overview. I have a 5-minute demo I could show you. Or we could just have a conversation. What would you like to do? Now, you don't know what they know about you already, so giving people that kind of a choice, some people say, well, I don't want to give them that kind of control. Well, if you give them that kind of control, they'll tell you what's most important to them. Guess what 80% of the time they choose? Do they choose the deck, the demo, or talk? This is from actual research. They choose the demo. Guess what 80% of you want to do in the first meeting? Pitch the deck. Keep the deck. Keep the deck away. If you don't have to pitch a deck and you get a second meeting, that's super. That's fantastic, actually. I would shoot for that over trying to shove a deck down somebody's eyes. Okay, number 7. Sometimes you want to play games with your audience. You could get your audience totally interested in whatever you're going to say by saying something like, ladies and gentlemen, I know that tonight you came here expecting to hear how to pitch to investors with 5 slides in under 5 minutes. Well, I have a little confession to make. It really only takes 3 minutes and 3 slides. Or whatever the confession is that you want to make. But the words, I have a confession, we want to know what it is. It's just human nature. It's not a religious confession, of course. It's something to kind of lighten the load of the room. Number 8 is along the same line. Sometimes you have something you want to sort of keep secret for a while. You can ask your audience. So can you keep a secret tonight? If I share something new with you here tonight, can you keep it a secret at least till tomorrow morning? If you will, I'll show it to you. If not, then you can have the rest of the night off. Number 9 is your value proposition. Sometimes your value proposition is really well constructed, and just by saying that, it's enough to captivate your audience and get them interested in hearing more. And number 10, to me, the most effective way to captivate any audience anywhere on the planet is with a story. Using your story, your authentic, honest, real story is one of the most important things that's going to help you stand out from the other companies that are nipping at your heels or doing what you're doing or maybe doing what you're doing or someday will do what you're doing. You need your story to be told in a way that compels people to want to know more. So stories are really, really important. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. So there's 10 ways. Is that enough? I could give you 10 more, 20 more, 30 more. Yes?
Well, give me an example of Canada. Can you keep a secret?
Can you keep a secret? It's a little bit, it's not for everybody. I've done this with some audiences once in a while. So can you all keep a secret? You would? Till maybe Monday-ish? So I am about to release my virtual coaching program. And I've been keeping it a secret for about 3 months because people really want to get in, but I'm too worried about getting people in and not being able to handle the business I have right now. So if you can keep it, it's one of those things where you're just kind of toying with the audience a little bit. You can't ask people to keep a secret forever. In fact, you have to know that somebody's going to let it out anyway. It's just a little gimmick. This is a little bit of a gimmick. So it's more of just, I don't know if my example was good enough or not, but we could talk more about that. All right, any other questions? Okay. Now, let's continue talking about the opening, because to me, your opening comes in another form that most of you take for granted, and that is when you come to an event like this, when we have a break or when we're done and you meet each other and you put out your hand and you say, "Hi, I am," and "Who are you?" And what's the next question you mostly get? So what do you do? What does your company do? At least here in America, in the US, that's one of the most common questions we are asked. If you're in Norway and you ask people what they do, they'll look at you like, "What? You want to know what I do? What do you mean, what do I do?" What does that even mean to them? You have to ask, what does your company do? Because they don't know, what do you do? That doesn't make sense. So be very careful about how you answer this question, because if you can't answer that question really effectively, you might not get another chance to say anything else. So how many of you have the type of product or service where you can stand up in front of a room and say that we have developed the cure for every cancer known to mankind? We have it. It works. Can any of you say that? Most of you probably can't. And so by being literal, we have developed the cure for cancer. That's a literal description of what we've done. Okay? If you can't get a response from your audience of a wow when you say what you do literally, then you need some other way. And very often when you try to tell people what you literally do, it ends up sounding complex, confusing, or worse, boring. Okay? And that should never happen in the first sentence or two that you tell somebody about. So let me give you 3 examples, and then I'll sum it up with the tools that are being used. So back 5-ish years ago, a guy jumps up on stage. I did not coach him. I wished I did. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I'm here to share our machines with you. We build machines that turn water into money." And right up on the screen, he puts this video. That thing is about a yard long. Under those yellow housings are micro turbines and flappers in the middle. So you throw it into any rushing waterway, you tie it off to the side, you plug it in, and now you're generating free electricity. So, does he build a machine that turns water into money? Excuse me? You started saying yes, but now you're saying no, it's not possible, folks. You can't do that. But what if he was very literal with the audience and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so thrilled to share with you, we build canal turbines." That's exciting stuff. Right? Which one would get you more interested in knowing more? We build machines that turn water into money, or we build canal turbines. Unless you're at a canal turbine convention. That second one ain't going to work for too many people. How about this flight? Have any of you been on this flight where you get to feel microgravity or weightlessness? Anybody in the room? Would you like to? If I paid your fare, it's about 10 grand. You go up there and you feel that arc, and now you get to feel weightlessness. Anybody want to go? All right, for those of you who would like to go, I'm just curious. If you had to guess, and I've talked to 2 people who have been up there, so I can validate your answers. What do you think it feels like right here when this person's floating, or when they're floating, or when they're floating? What do you think it physically feels like? Not a mental feeling, a physical feeling we've all had on Earth. No, that's a mental feeling. I'm looking for a physical feeling. You are only disoriented. You are correct, by the way. He is absolutely right. You are disoriented because it's like you're floating here, and if there's no way for you to pull yourself or push yourself over there, you're stuck. It's very disoriented. But I'm looking for a physical feeling that you've all probably had on Earth that's probably very much like what it feels like right then. No, not adrenaline. Sorry? Falling? No. Underwater, yes. Floating, in the pool, roller coaster, in the car, you go over a bump and it's like, whoa. That kind of a feeling, that's what it feels like. So now you know what it feels like. Now you don't have to go. But here's what most of you try to do when explaining something like microgravity. You give the scientific explanation so that the investor or the customer really gets what the heck you're doing, when in fact, it's much easier. How about this one? I ran into a CEO a number of years ago and I asked him what he did, and he said, Nathan, I am the CEO of Maverick Surfboards, and we do for surfing what the chairlift does for downhill snow skiers. And then he just stopped for a minute, let me pause, and then he said, you know, the problem with surfing is 95% of surfing is this, getting out to the waves. Well, we invented an electric surfboard with a little wireless controller that goes on your thumb. You press the button, you can get out to the wave you want to surf, or press the button to get ahead of the wave you want to surf and have a whole lot more fun. We do for surfing what the chairlift does for downhill snow skiers. He could have said, we sell electric surfboards. And again, if he's not at a surfboard convention, most people wouldn't care. But what each of these three examples did was use what I like you to remember as the name Sam. If you ever find somebody that's confused, if you have something that's really complex to tell somebody what it is, go for a Sam. You need a simile, an analogy, or a metaphor right at that moment. We build machines that turn water, that's literal, right, into money. That's the metaphor. We do for surfing what the chairlift does for downhill snow skiers. That's an analogy. Microgravity is just like floating in the pool. Oh, I get it. Now, I know how simple this sounds, because it is. We try to make it more complex than it really is. We think that if we give the scientific explanation, people will just understand. And 90% of the time, that scientific explanation does exactly opposite than what you think it's going to do. And a good simile, analogy, or metaphor is all you need. We use them in normal life. If you have kids, you know you use similes, analogies, and metaphors with your kids all the time. Otherwise, how would they appreciate the world around them? I ask you to think the same thing about the people you're trying to persuade to listen to you about your businesses. They're like kids. You need similes, analogies, and metaphors. They don't have time, they don't have the brain power, or even the interest to know what the scientific explanations are behind some of these things, especially in meeting number one. All right. Number two. Now, this is really what I think you came for here tonight, and that is my 5Q framework. These are 5 questions, literally 5 slides is all you need. And then if you cannot turn your monologue into a dialogue in 5 minutes with 5 slides, you probably have your answer, which is no. Better no than maybe. All right, so when you have 5 minutes, better yet, when you have 1 minute, what is the number of words, what are the number of words that you can speak in 1 minute? Anybody know? 250? That's a guess, right?
No, I looked it up.
You looked it up. Because what I have found is that the average person speaks between 120 and 140 words per minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking for 2 minutes. That's right.
Ah, so then we're in line. We're good. So this way now you can look at your word count to test roughly how long your pitch will take when you have these limited times to work with. Whether it's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, or whatever that number of minutes are that people give you to pitch on a stage like this. At the Million Cups, you have 6 minutes. And they're pretty strict about that time. So you better watch the clock there. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Okay? Now, how many of you here have not seen the talk on TED by Simon Sinek called How Great Leaders Inspire Action? Just a quick show of hands. You have not seen it yet. Okay, please, this is one of those talks that you should do before you go to sleep tonight. Because it is one of the most compelling talks for startups to think about, in my opinion. And the reason why, ironically why, is because so many of you tell people what you're doing. And Simon, through research and science, is going to show you how that's the last thing on their mind. What most people, especially investors, really care about is why you do what you do, not what. And Simon's talk, I don't want to take any time tonight or steal any of his thunder, but this talk is an amazing talk for all of you to consider, especially when you're looking for those story arcs. Like, how do you tell your story? Starting with why, moving to the how, and then finally ending up with the what is an amazingly beautiful story arc to use whenever you're trying to communicate with anything, in fact, especially in the startup world. Now, I am going to give you a link to my presentation at the end, so if you just want to go right to this point in the presentation, I have his talk in the presentation, same one that you would find on TED. It's right there for you. And then I really encourage you, if you like what you hear in this talk, to pick up his book. The book called Start With Why is an amazing, amazing book. It gives you depth behind what you hear in that video. You think if after 18 minutes you like what you heard, you will love what you read in the book. Okay? And I can vouch for Simon and this why, because Simon's coach, his actual coach that drew him out, that got him to his why, is the same coach that I hired 9 years ago as well. And this is one of those things. When you get to your why, you will have so much more confidence and competence in what you're talking to, who you're talking to, and what you're talking about, and how people engage with you and how they respond to you. You will see a difference when you start with why versus starting with what. It takes a little getting used to, because most of you are really comfortable with starting with what. Okay. So let's show you how to turn this monologue into a dialogue. Blah, 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 slide 1. Blah, 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 slide 2. Blah, 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 slide 3. Blah, 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 slide 4. Hey, I have a question. And now your whole presentation is off, because they're going to ask you a question about slide number 8. Now what do you do? Do you go to number 8, or do you say, can you hold on to that question? I'll be there in a few minutes. I don't know. But there's too much information, just too much. And so let's boil it down. Let's make a really nice sauce for them. Okay. Here's the 5Q framework. You can try it out. I've been testing this now for 3 years. My clients have been coming back with rave reviews, especially when you are pitching against 10 or 20 or 30 other companies who are all using 10, 30, 40, 50 slides. When you stand up there and say, so panelists, I want to make sure that you know right up front, I only have 5 slides. It'll take me only 5 of the 8 minutes to get through. And boom, now you do your thing, and it's like, wow, you just stood out among all those 30. Unless you're all pitching against each other, that is. All right, let me ask you, what do you think the number one question on most investors' mind is? Sorry? How do you make money? Investors, I'm just talking investors for a moment. I would argue no. But
What problem do you solve?
what's the problem that you're solving? If you say how you make money, I don't know why you're telling me that. But if you tell me what is the problem or the unmet need that you're solving, then you have my attention. Or hopefully you have my attention. And this is where you use your story. It could be a personal story. Hopefully it could be a really compelling story, short story. In a 5-minute pitch, you can allocate about a minute to each one of these. In a 3-minute pitch, you could probably allocate good 30, 35, 40 seconds to each one of these. Okay, so only talking 1 or 2 sentences, 3 sentences at most. You really have to boil it down. If you say anything else before you identify what the problem with the unmet need is, everything else is a little bit out of context until you understand what the problem is that you're solving. And if it's not a problem, then it's probably an unmet need. Okay? Now, to be fair to you, there are times when starting with the money would be the right thing. Hey, folks, we just closed a deal for $12 million, or Whatever. That's cool. That'll get my attention. Why are you telling me that? Because it solves a big problem for that, and then you get into it. Okay, what do you think number 2 is? How are you going to fix the problem? That's what most people think.
How big is the problem?
How big is the problem is a really good question, but I have chosen to leave it out of the 5Q framework. It's much better when you have a longer presentation. There is a video that you'll have access to. It's free, called How to Pitch to Investors with 13 slides in under 10 minutes. It's David Rose's 13 slides from New York that I've been using for 9 years, and companies have been raising money all left and right using it, but today it's just too much for the first meeting. Okay, number 2 is not the solution. They don't care about the solution yet. They care about...
Why is it worth solving?
They care about you. They want to know why you. Are any of you famous yet? Yet? Have any of you been on the front cover of Forbes magazine, so when you walk down the street or into an investor's office, they know you by sight? No, of course not, right? So if you don't establish your credibility as the very next thing, then all you're doing to the investor is leaving questions in their mind on things that you're saying that they're wondering if I should trust you. Should I trust you that what you're saying is true? And when you build trust, one of the ways to build that trust is to establish your credibility. And it's not a CV listing or a resume read. It's like the medical doctors started out. When I met my co-founder in medical school, blah, 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 16 years later, okay, they have credibility. And I know you're not all medical doctors. You all don't have PhDs. But you have something that you can stand on that should give the investor a certain level of comfort that I can trust you. At least I can trust you for a few minutes about what you're about to tell me. So if you identify a really cool problem and you illustrate it through a great story, and now you tell just a little bit about you so I have confidence in what you're saying, then everything else you say, hopefully they'll believe more. It'll be more believable. But if you leave your credibility till the end, which is what most people do, most rubrics put the team as slide number 9, 10, 11, or something like that. You can leave your team down there if you want to. I'm not going to argue with you about that. There's no right or wrong way. I believe your team needs to be much sooner in the deck for an investor than most people. But I can tell you this, if you don't establish your credibility soon in the deck, I don't care how much time you take to get to that team, you're wasting all that opportunity to be believable and to have confidence in you. Okay? I hope I've stressed that enough. It's not hard. If you need a book, by the way, to help you on how to talk about yourself, the best book I've ever read, and I recommend this to people, it's called Brag. B-R-A-G. Brag. And the subtitle is How to Toot Your Own Horn Without Blowing It. It's a wonderful book. All of you have an amazing amount of background data that you can use to put together a beautiful 30 or 60-second talk on who you are. Not that you're going to use the whole thing here, but I guarantee if you go through the 12 questions that book shows you, you'll have so much data to pull from. It'll be more obvious to you. Now, question number 3, what's the solution? What's the world like with you compared to what's the world like without you? So this is number 3, is where you talk about your solution. Show your product or your service if you can. If you're making a hardware device, pull out a 3D printed version of it, if that's all you have. People love seeing 3D printed versions of the products that you're going to be making, no matter how low res they are. Okay, there's no excuse to not have something in your hand if you're building something to show people, even if it's a 3D model. Okay?
Well, if it's something big,
Oh yeah, of course. If it's too big, then pictures or a video of it that you can put up here on the screen would probably be plenty. Number 4. Okay, you now have identified a great problem. The team or you sound very credible. And wow, that's so cool. Now, how are you going to make money? How are you going to sell it? How are you going to make money? Any social impact or nonprofits in the room? You still have to make money too. You may have to break even at least, right? Otherwise you're going to be sucking money from investors until they're tired of giving it away for no reason. So you need to tell them how you're going to make money, not chapter and verse, not your 5-year projection necessarily, but you need to tell them how you plan to make money. And you cannot use the old Twitter excuse. You know, years ago when Twitter was raising their money and investors said, so how are you going to make money? Twitter said, we don't know. We're just going to go get users first. You can try that angle, but it typically won't work.
Isn't what that's the whole .com was based on?
Well, a lot of it was, yes. And then number 5, this is one that most of you forget. You just stop. Okay, I'm done. Do you have any questions? It's like, wait a minute, you forgot to tell them what you want. And probably half of the pitches I see have no ask. And it's not only asking for money. It could be the reason I'm here talking to you today, investors, is we're not looking for money. We closed our round 3 months ago, and we're set for a good 18 to 24 months. But what we really need is we need some marquee enterprise customers who blah, 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 blah. If you happen to know anybody in the high ranks of those companies, we'd love an introduction. Or you need an office space, or whatever you need. Ask for it. If they like you, they might just give it to you. Okay? But if you don't ask for something, then it's like, well, why did you just pitch? That's it. Those are the 5 questions, 5 slides. Now, honestly, most of my clients have a real hard time with 1 slide with question number 3. Okay, all right, I get it. Sometimes you need 3 or 4 or 5 slides to show off your product. All right, okay, go for it. But it's still a 5-minute talk, folks. 5 minutes, that's all you should need to get somebody interested so they can ask you an intelligent question, or they can say, you know what, we just don't invest in companies that are doing what you're doing. So really appreciate you just give me the quick overview. I don't want to waste any more of your time. So thank you, we're into ERP and you're not, and somehow you got in here, and we appreciate you coming through, but that's it. So those are the 5 questions, 5 slides, it's all you need, 5 minutes, and after that, if you don't have a dialogue with the person or people you're talking with, as I said before, you have your answer. Thank them very much for their time, close up your kit, and go home. When you get a link to this presentation tonight, I have 4 examples for you to watch as what I consider really great elevator pitches. This one by Smug Mug, when you watch that one, you'll see how in less than 30, I think it's 29 seconds, he not only uses 2 similes in the opening, but he gives you exactly what you need in order to know how they are going to beat out Flickr, Google, and every other photo sharing service that was on the market when they first came out. So if you have one of those services that there's already services out there like it, you can compete. You just have to figure out how. And the other 3 come from the Wall Street Journal competition, where those 3 people, or those 3 companies each had 60 seconds with me in the elevator at the Wall Street Journal in New York. They pitched for 1 minute, then I gave them feedback. They had an hour to repurpose their presentation. Then we went back into the elevators and did it again. What I think you'll find by watching some of these, like this guy over here, number 4, Mert, to me, was one of the best elevator pitches I'd ever seen. Just spot on, like 59 seconds, and smiles all the way, interacted with me. And then I gave him feedback, 1 little tiny tweak. I wanted him to add an analogy. And he said, you know, that's right. That's the thing we've been missing. That's perfect. And then he went off for an hour and worked on it, came back into the elevator. Not only was his energy down, he forgot the analogy. And the only reason that happened was because he was such a perfectionist that he had actually rehearsed his elevator pitch for nearly 5 hours. And at 1 hour was not enough time for him to integrate that change. So don't be too hard on him. The fact that the second one was not as good as the first one, people like him and me, we need time to assimilate the things we want to tell people so that they sound very natural and not rehearsed. Some of the others you'll see, they really sound rehearsed. Okay, number 3 is storytelling. If you're not, yes?
I guess along those lines, do you recommend actually scripting out your speech versus just practicing it? Because if you have a script, it will sound more rehearsed.
So did you hear the question in the back for those on, the question was, do I recommend a written script or a rehearsed script? Because, you know, if you don't rehearse it enough, it will sound like you're pulling it out of your head, and that's not what you want to happen. So my answer is it depends on how much time you have between now and the time when you need to perform it. Most adults need a good 3 to 4 weeks with a final script in order to make it sound like it's natural. And honestly, in a 5-minute pitch, you should use Steve Jobs' approach, 1 hour rehearsal for every 1 minute on stage. So we're looking at least 5 hours of rehearsal, not, of course, all in one time. And some tricks that you can use to memorize your pitch. And by the way, I'm not a big fan of memorizing if you don't spend enough time to get beyond the memorization.
It should just come freely, like.
It'll come freely if you get to that state where it is so indelibly in your head, marked in your brain, that when you speak it, whether you use the word if, then, or else, it doesn't matter. It's all coming out kind of naturally. You know, there are 4 stages of competency when it relates to this sort of thing. And I didn't make this up. But you need to go from the consciously competent stage, which is, what's the next line? Oh, yeah. And then you deliver it, and then you're looking for the next line, and you deliver it, to the point where you can just stand up there and deliver the presentation as if you've done it a whole bunch of times. It sounds very natural. Now, let me give you a secret to not memorizing, but still pulling off an amazing pitch. Tell 5 stories. Okay? So for the 5 slides, just come up with 5 stories. And know that each story is approximately 1 minute long. And then outline the story, sort of the path that you want to go in that story, with a word or a phrase. And then just work from the outline. Then rehearse each story separately until each story sounds very natural. Don't think, by the way, that you can come up with a new story right now and come up here and make it sound really great. Some people are really good at that. But most of the time, you need what I call a test telling. A test telling. You need to tell it a whole bunch of times, 3, 4, 5, 6 times to people, and have them look at you like, or, wow, that was great. And get that feedback from people. Okay? Now, one more secret to memorizing a script. This is my favorite. I didn't make it up, but it works. Do you know how you memorize a song? How does a song get in your head? I've heard it on the radio over and over and over again. All of a sudden, now you're saying the words before the other person's saying the words. Well, guess what? Your script is a song. So pick up your voice, your smartphones when the script is done. Pick up your smartphone, hit that voice recorder, and deliver as if you are on the Broadway stage. And then just listen to it over and over and over and over, and stop playing Facebook, stop doing Pokemon Go, and just listen to yourself. 2 things will happen when you listen to yourself. 1, oh no, I cannot present like that. So you'll see and hear your own energies, and you'll know when you need to amp it up. And the other thing is, your brain will start to memorize the words, because you'll be hearing it over and over and over again. If you listen to your own presentation performed the way you hope to present it up here on the night of, you listen to it 25, 50 times, maybe more, you'll have it. Okay? Now, I want to talk about storytelling a little bit because it is really a vital part to all of your journeys. In fact, till you have a product or service built, all you have is your story. Really. I mean, you have your idea, but so what? Ideas are a dime a dozen. The story is what helps make your idea stand out. And of course, the execution of that idea as well. Now, storytelling works. You know this. You've been on the TED Talks, the TEDx Talks. They all work beautifully, most of them anyway, because they're all stories. It's just story after story after story after story. And the reason they work so well is because they're using human nature. They're not asking you to memorize a script up there, although most of those TED Talks are very, very memorized. Like right down to the word, the pause, the emotion. When you do something over and over like that, that's how you get. I mean, when you go to a Broadway show and they're all memorized up there, you get sucked into the characters, you feel like you're a part of them. The same thing can happen when you are presenting if you use stories. Why do stories work so well? I don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but you know that people instantly relate to your stories because that's how the brain is wired. It's how it works. People remember your stories, and that's a good thing. And my favorite part of storytelling in the startup world is that people will retell your stories, especially investors. They see a lot of you. They meet a lot of you at these events. They go to the Angel List or Gust and they watch 20 or 30 videos that day. They just see a lot of people. The better your story, the more compelling your story is, the more likely they might just retell that story without even looking at any of their notes when they get back to their firm to share what they've just found this week or this month. How do you get those stories into the head of the person or the audience that you're dealing with? Well, the first thing is you have to have a good number of stories to pull from. Do you have all your stories written down? Doubtful. So let me give you a tool right now that will help you get all the stories out of your head into a place where you can use them. Because you have lots of stories going on up there. If you've been in business for anything more than a minute, if you've thought about your idea and bringing it to the world for anything more than a minute, you've got stories. Some are better than others, some are more compelling than others, some are more relevant to what you're doing today versus what you were doing back then, but they're stuck in your head, and I want to get them out so you have access to them. So Craig Wortman is another one of the presenters at the Kauffman Foundation, and he wrote a book called What's Your Story? And as soon as I read this book 7 years ago, I called him on the phone right away and I asked him if I could share a chapter of his book with my audiences. And well, he gave me permission. So here it is. You don't have to buy the book. He talks about how using stories in business is so underutilized. And one of the ways that you can have better access to your stories is to get them out of your brain into a story matrix. Now, a story matrix is nothing more than a spreadsheet, folks. There's no application to download, no service to sign up for, no money out of your pocket. It's actually free. It's just a spreadsheet. And you all know how to do spreadsheets. Column labels are just these 4 kinds of stories. This is a recommendation by Craig. I've been doing this for 7 years. I have never found a need for another column of types of stories. Success, failure, fun, and legend. Now, Craig talks about the legend column being stories that are legendary, like Wild Bill kind of stories that you use in your business to illustrate some point. When I got this, I thought, you know what, I don't use those kinds of stories. So I'm going to use that column when I meet famous people. So that's what I use it for. So you can use it for whatever you want, but at least you can have 4 basic categories of stories. And then your row labels, you choose your row labels. Okay? I'll give you some suggestions. As startuppers, you're probably all going to have stories in these categories, right? You're going to have success customer stories. You're going to have failure customer stories. You're going to have fun customer stories. And maybe one day you'll have a legendary customer story. I don't know, but the legend in column, that's a tough one. It doesn't matter. I know, how do you use this? Well, the way I use it is a little hard to read here. When you get the link, you'll see what it is. The way I use it is I go into the column and the row and I put the date. I put a couple of words that remind me of the story. So when I look at this thing a week or a month or 10 years from now, I'll be able to go to my success sales story and know that on June 19th, 2015, I helped close a deal for $1.2 million at Logica PLC in the UK. That's enough. I could tell you the rest of that story just based on those few words. And that's how your brain will react as well. But if you don't collect the stories, if you don't put them into the spreadsheet, they don't get there by themselves. It just takes a minute or less. When you come up with a story or something happens, just put a note in there. Okay? And this can become a living document that can help you grow your business. When you go into an investor's office and it looks like it's been a long, hot day and people don't seem like they're that happy, well, pull out some fun stories to tell, right? If you have the unfortunate invitation to present at FailCon, it's a TED for failure. It's TED Talks for Failure. FailCon, it's a real conference. It started right here in San Francisco. You don't believe me, do you? You literally get 15 minutes to go up on stage and tell people how you blew it, how you failed. And then everybody learns how not to do what you just did. And it's an amazing conference. Well, if you have the unfortunate experience of being invited to deliver a talk at that conference, well, you could just go to this column, and if you are honest with yourself during your business building and growing and whatever, you will have so many stories there to pull from, you won't know what to cover. Okay, so your story matrix can be a great way for you to just have instant recall of your stories. Okay, moving right along. Didn't I tell you this earlier? I normally don't repeat myself. Okay, there are a couple of guidelines for storytelling. When you tell a story, you do not need to start this way. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share a story with you here tonight about when I was growing up on Long Island about 25, 30 years ago. Really? Why don't you just tell me what it was like growing up 25 years ago on Long Island instead of telling me you're going to tell me a story about growing up on Long Island? The point is, just tell the story. Don't waste our time, because the first 10 seconds of your storytelling, what you do and what you say, is when the audience decides if they're going to listen to the rest of the story. So if you bore them in the first few seconds, then they think the rest of the story is probably going to be boring as well. And then finally, for storytelling, do you know what these movie trailers were designed for in the real world? Like, why do we watch movie trailers? It's not a hard night. Remember, this is simple stuff. You watch a movie trailer so you want to go to the movie. Or it's a slasher kind of a movie. I don't go to those movies, but I'll tell my friend about it. And I'll say, no, that's not for me, but I'll tell my friend about it. The point I want to make here is that in your first meeting with most investors, whether it's over a cup of coffee or whether it's a formal presentation like this, make your business pitch the movie trailer version of your business, not the movie. That's the analogy I want you to go away with tonight. Give people the movie trailer. They might just want to go to the movie. But if you give them the movie on day one, then what? It's not like you're holding back. It's just that it's human nature. I want more. Well, if you want more, you can't give them everything on day one. So don't even try. The less you talk in the first meeting, the better off you'll be. Honestly, if you do a little talking and they do lots of talking, there's a whole lot of better chance you'll get a second meeting than if you do more talking than they do talking. Okay. I know what happened here. Yes, I duplicated a presentation. I remade it for you all tonight, and I forgot to delete a couple of points. But you heard me talk about Simon Sinek earlier. It's a great way to build a story arc, starting with why, moving to how, and ending up with what. Ding, ding, ding. Sorry about that. Okay, to wrap up, I have a bonus for you. This is a pet peeve of mine, and that is what I call the second first impression. I know that kind of doesn't make sense, but it's sort of on purpose. So when we meet people for the first time, or we go into an office and we reach out and shake people's hands, we're actually doing something so intimate with somebody, but yet most people take this for granted. They just shake a hand. And I can tell you right now that if you don't have a good handshake, then everything else after that handshake could be like a waste of your time. People sometimes make a decision about the kind of person you are, about the kind of business you're going to conduct, simply based on your handshake. Now, I know that sounds pretty cruel, but I'll tell you what, if I walked over to you right now and I shook your hand like this, how do you feel?
That's lame. Lame, no energy. I don't know.
Lame, no energy, because I barely shook his hand. I just put my hand in his hand, like, just gently. And around here and in the United States, if you don't have a firm handshake, I'm not talking about a bone-crushing handshake, but if you don't have a firm handshake as a man to man, woman to man, or woman to woman, then you're missing out an opportunity to build an incredible amount of confidence in you from that other person based on how you shake somebody's hand. So none of this lobster claw handshake stuff. A nice firm handshake. Now, would you like me to show you how to avoid the bone crusher? Because I know some people have smaller hands, and if you have a small hand, it's possible that somebody can come in and hurt you. I hear this from women a lot. Oh, I don't want to pull their hand too hard because they'll push back and hurt me. Does anybody want to know how to avoid the bone crusher? You'd like to know? Okay, who do you think is the strongest person in this room? This gentleman? Come on up here. Can I borrow you for a second? They all volunteered you. You're sitting in the front. You couldn't tell. You don't have to take off your glasses. I'm not going to hit you. But come on over here. Your name?
Nelson.
Nelson. Nice to meet you, Nelson. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and shake Nelson's hand again. And I'm going to ask you, Nelson, with all of your might, don't hold back. I want you to really try to crush my hand. And we're going to do this first, and then I'll show you how I can avoid this. Now, we're just going to go normal. I know you know that we're going to do this now, but in normal situations, you don't know if somebody's going to crush your hand or not. So here's what you need to do. Are you ready? Okay. I really want you to now crush me. Are you trying as hard as you can?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Nelson. Great to meet you. Thank you very much. So don't go away. Oh, actually, no, you can go. I can show people how it was done. The reason he couldn't hurt me, and he was close. I mean, you are strong. That was a real... That grip was a strong grip, but he could not hurt me because my good friend, who was a mixed martial artist from 7 years ago, showed me the secret. And here it is. This part of your hand must hit that part of their hand. If you go for that part right in between, boom. If you hit that part, then usually your knuckles are ahead of their hand and they cannot wiggle them and crush them unless you have a real tiny hand. And most people, if you have a small hand, they're going to go easy on you. So go and push straight in so that way you know that you get to that point and you can't hurt me right now, right? Because I'm behind that leverage point. And when people miss, sometimes if we miss, somebody will grab hard right like, oh, excuse me, sorry about that. There we go. I'll actually pull away if they try to hurt me. And that's what you all can do if they try to hurt you too. Don't let people hurt you. But a good firm handshake is really important, especially in the United States. I know it's a cultural thing when you go to different parts of the world. Check it out, see what the cultural norm is for handshakes. I know in some parts of the world, you shake hands and you hold hands while you talk. That is pretty uncomfortable for some people. Just try that for a while. Just sit there and, yeah. And so where you been? Where'd you go to dinner last night? Okay. And don't do the two-handed handshake, please. You know those politician handshakes?
Where you grab the upper arm.
Yeah, you grab the hand, grab the arm kind of thing. I think that's too familiar for a first-time handshake. And don't go down on top of people either, because that's where you get the upper hand from. Don't go under either, because they're giving them control. Just go straight on, shake, 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 pull away. Simple as that. Okay, moving along. All right, in conclusion, I want to thank you so much for your time tonight. We're not completely done, but I do want to just give you a 10-second commercial. My virtual coaching course is now available. It's right here on my website. It'll teach you elevator pitch, investor pitch, or demo day pitch. Working with me one-on-one is a little bit hard these days because I'm traveling around a lot and my fees have gone up too high for some people. But you can get me remotely and through virtual coaching through this program. I take you through everything that I would normally take you through one-on-one. We just work over my software program that we work together. And you get me. You don't get some other person in the background giving you feedback and coaching. That's it. So here's a link to the presentation that I just gave you tonight. It's right on my website, /Startup House. Shouldn't be too hard for you to remember. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, so if you link in, whether you're here this evening or whether you're watching on YouTube anytime in the future, please feel free to link in with me. I'm a big believer in paying it forward. So if you find somebody in my network that you want to meet, I will be happy to introduce you to them. I might not remember them exactly, but it's not that important. They know me, and if you want to meet them, I'll introduce you. And the rest of the contact information is there. So how are we doing on time? 7:15, perfect. Are there any questions? What do you think? Does this help? Was this helpful? Do you have a couple of more F's now as it relates to your ability to communicate the value of what you do and why you do it and why anybody should care? Do you see the value of having a really powerful handshake introduction? So what do? Oh, we build machines that turn water into money. Wow. I wish I had more time to learn about that. Here's my card. Call me. Or, gee, I'd like to know more about that right now. So similes, analogies, metaphors, stories. Yes?
It's a little out of scope, but you mentioned a couple times that there could be, this is like the first meeting, and then there could be a second or a third.
Yes.
How many, I guess, on average, how many meetings are you expecting for?
So is your question, how many meetings should you expect to have to go through before you get term sheets? I would say you're looking at a minimum of 3 meetings before you even mention the word. Because usually you meet one-on-one, then they say, come back, meet my partners. Then the partners say, yeah, come back, meet these guys, then due diligence. You know, due diligence could take several weeks, several months, unless you've had a due diligence done by another firm that they'll accept as valid, depending on who you're dealing with. It's a minimum of 3, and that's even a small number. I've heard people having 10 to 15 meetings before they get term sheets with one group. Yes?
Obviously it varies by stage. If you're
Of course.
angel investors, it can be 1 or 2. If you're going for a Series C and asking for tens of millions, it's going to be
Of course.
10 more.
Yeah, of course. It's always dependent on the stage of your company, how many rounds have you raised before, things like that. Nelson, did you have a question?
Yeah,
Nelson, right?
Yes, thank you. Okay, here's something that maybe goes against the thing. It's like, you know, like, you've all seen those, like, videos or something, and someone comes on and says, my name is so-and-so, and I'm inventor of this. And to me, it's like, that seems a little ass backward, because, you know, if you say, oh, I'm so-and-so, and then you show me something that's bored me, I have no interest, and they're like, why did I even learn this guy's name? I don't want to know who he is until he shows me something that interests me. I mean, am I just, you know...
No, I actually agree with you totally. And when you start a pitch, I'm never suggesting, hi, my name is Nathan Golden, I'm the CEO of blah, blah, blah. And that's like wasting time. I agree with you. I usually kind of model what they do on TV. So they say, we're reporting from New Orleans tonight on the biggest this, that, or the other thing. I'm Nathan Gold, reporting from blah, blah, blah. So your name is not that important. And you can leave your name till the end of a pitch, in fact. You can wrap up by saying, and I'm Nathan Gold, the CEO of, it could be at the end, it could be after your opening. It does not have to be the first thing that you say, which is what a lot of people tend to just think they should do, which is to say, hi, everybody, I'm Nathan Gold, CEO of blah, blah, blah. It's like, why? It's already in the program, usually.
Particularly in like a Kickstarter
Yeah.
campaign or something. I'm going, this is my incredible thing. And then if something's boring, it's like, why don't you get bigger name?
And this is why I have boiled that 13 slides down into 5 slides, so that you just start with the why, which is really the first question. Why are you doing what you're doing is the problem, right? So you really are starting with why. I kind of head faked you there tonight. The first question of my 5Q is why? Why are you doing what you're doing? Who? That's right. Who are you?
But
Yeah, again, it's more of a statement of credibility so that I know that what you're telling me I can kind of believe or have better faith in what you're saying. Yes? How many F's were in the text? 6. There were 6. I guess I'd have to go all the way back.
No, that's fine.
You don't want to see? Yeah, it's 6. It was 6.
I was just wondering how people would see 9 or something like that.
Well, that's after. We'll have some wine and beer after and figure that part out. The which? Imagination. Maybe we all have something to learn here tonight. Any other questions? Yes. In the pitch, should you talk about the origin of the idea? Well, if the origin of the idea helps you build the case around the why you're doing what you're doing, most definitely. In fact, that's very often a great place to start. What's the genesis of your idea? What was that spark, that moment? You were on an airplane with your co-founder, all of a sudden there was turbulence, and then boom, the idea sparked. And that's a great way to start out, for sure. Any others? Any other questions? All right, I know it's been a long day for a lot of you. It's a little bit warm. I'm going to hang out for a little bit before I go back to Fremont. I'm just down the road a bit. So I know that some of you came here maybe tonight expecting to pitch. Is there anyone who would like to? 1, 2. Do you want to do it in front of everybody or just with me privately?
I'd love to.
You want to do it in front of everybody? In front of everybody. Okay, so here's what we'll do. We have 2 people who want to pitch. We're going to give them 5 minutes to pitch. They can pitch whatever they want to pitch, and then I'm going to give them honest, real feedback. Whether they use the 5 questions or whether they do whatever they normally do, it's up to them. You are welcome to stay and watch and see the feedback that they are going to receive from me, or you can go home. But in any case, I want to thank you very, very much for coming tonight, and I hope that I truly did not waste your time. Thank you. All right, so why don't we give you guys like 5 minutes to...